We're gonna go ahead and get started. Good morning. Thank you all so much for being here. This is the Perkins State Plan Committee for the state of Montana. So happy you could join us. This is our first round of our meetings for the year. We are planning to have one here with our friends at Board of Public Ed. We'll also have one with the Board of Regents, and then we'll also be joining the State Workforce Innovation Board at one of their meetings in the spring. So this is the first of our meetings, and just very pleased to have you all here. Really appreciate you being here. We are going to do a round of introductions so that we know who's in the room and who is on our committee. We're really glad to have Commissioner Christian here. So Commissioner, if I could have you, if you want to introduce yourself, say hi, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I can introduce myself, Clay Christian, yep. Press the top. Thank you. Clay Christian, Commissioner of Higher Education, privileged to serve in that capacity. Perkins, very important bedrock foundation for the work we all do together between higher ed, K-12, for career education. I just want to thank the committee for your service and embrace the new format. I think it will serve us well and help put these funds to good use, which is what's expected of us from the taxpayer that gave us those. So look forward to the work ahead. Full disclosure, I am going to sneak out at some point. Regents meeting in town this week, so we're at campus setting up today, and I'll probably head over there in a little bit. But I did want to stop by and just say thank you all. Thanks for your service on the committee and the work that you do to make Perkins a success.
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate it. So I think what we'll do is Shannon and I, my partner in crime, we will be running the slides. And so we'll go ahead and introduce ourselves, and then we'll go around with our committee members. And then we have a couple other folks here that can introduce themselves that are part of this work as well. So my name is Jackie Treaster. I work for the Commissioner of Higher Education with the university system. I'm the director of career and technical education and dual enrollment. And so Perkins, we live, eat, breathe Perkins. We love it. So we are very happy to be here and have these conversations.
Good morning, Shannon Boswell from the Office of Public Instruction. I'm the director for career technical and adult education in the K-12 system. So thinking about all things CTE and adult education related. And we are excited to have everyone here with us to talk about the wonderful work that we're doing.
Okay, so I think we'll just go around the room. So Tammy, do you mind introducing yourself next?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Tammy Hickey, and I am the new Executive Director of the State Workforce Innovation Board.
Good morning, I am Orrin Johnson, and I'm the Director of the Central Montana CTE Academy in Lewistown.
Good morning, I'm Craig Behringer. I'm the Deputy Superintendent at the Office of Public Instruction. I'm sitting in for Superintendent Hedlund, who could not be here this morning.
Good morning, everybody. Joe Teal, Deputy Commissioner, Academic Research and Student Affairs with the Office of the Commissioner of Higher Ed.
Good morning, I'm McCall I'm the Executive Director at the Board of Public Education, mostly just helping with tech support this morning. But I do want to note that we do have majority, if not all, of the Board of Public Ed members in the audience here today. One of the requirements was that this meeting be held in conjunction with the Board of Public Ed meeting. So happy that they were all here to observe and join you this morning.
Good morning, I'm Chris Stockton. I'm staff for the Board of Public Education and just helping with the technology this morning.
Michael Jorgensen, I'm the training director for Billings Pipe Trades JTC and also on the Board of Plumbers.
Morning, everyone. I'm Lily Apdale. I'm the director of the Office of Health Research and Partnership at the University of Montana.
Okay, wonderful. And thank you all so much for the board for being here. If you have anything to add to the conversation, please feel free to do so. So it looks like, do we just have Patty online? Patty, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Good morning. I'm Patty Fleming. I'm the director of the Montana Manufacturing Extension Center, which is housed at Montana State University.
Thank you so much for joining, Patty. We might have a couple more joining online, and so we'll just keep an eye out for them. Feel free to interrupt me so that we can make sure that they get introductions as well. So we'll go ahead and get started. So obviously I already did our introductions. Thanks so much to our committee members for serving, and then thank you so much for the Board of Public Education for joining us and being willing to be a part of the conversation. This is our official membership for this committee. So in statute, it is outlined that our Commissioner of Higher Education appoints 3 folks. Our Superintendent of Public Instruction appoints 3 folks. And then we're lucky enough to have Tammy here as the Director of SWIB. Funnily enough, Tammy has actually been on this committee before in a previous role, so this is all very familiar for her. And then of course we have Michael. So Tammy and Michael are appointed by our Commissioner of Labor. And so a couple of new folks at the table, and we're really excited to have you both here. So again, thank you so much for joining us and taking the time. So just a little bit of information about why we're here, what we're doing. And so this is in Montana statute that we are going to have 3 meetings a year, and we're going to make sure that we're talking about the state plan. And this is really the plan that is driving a lot of the decisions that are being made on how we spend this nearly $7 million a year federal investment in Montana career and technical education. And so, we want to take the time and carefully go through the plan and see if there are any issues or concerns that we need to address at the state level. We want to make sure that we're always serving our students, our employers, and the programs that are in Montana, strengthening the programs that our students are participating in, and making sure that they're ready for the employers that are going to be hiring them. Either after they graduate from high school with credentials, or if they decide to pursue some post-secondary education. So we will be having our 3 meetings a year. Board of Ed, luckily we were so lucky to be able to join today in Missoula. I think the plan is, and it's not super official, so don't block out your calendars just yet. But I think the plan is that we will be joining the Board of Regents in January in Helena, and the State Workforce Innovation Board in April. TBD, I think, location. Okay, we'll know very soon. So that's kind of our plan for this committee for the next year. Just a little overview of Perkins. I'd like to give a reminder because Perkins is just so important for the state of Montana. This is such an incredible investment in our students and our programs. And I just want to remind everybody how just the impact that it has in our state. So our total state award is about $6.8 million a year. 85% of that is sent directly to our schools through our local funds. So it's going directly to the programs that are serving our students. 65% of that lump sum are allocated to our high schools, and actually now some middle school programs as well, and we can talk about that in more depth if needed. But that's about $3.3 million that goes directly to those programs at the secondary side. And then 35% of the local funds are given to our 2-year colleges, tribal colleges, community colleges in Montana. And that's about $1.78 million. So again, just a major investment every year in our programs, both at the secondary and post-secondary sides. I think I'll pause just for a moment because we're going to jump into our first real topic. Are there any questions generally about our committee or Perkins? Anything that I can clarify before we move forward? Okay, seeing none. So the first.
I have a question.
Sure.
Can you explain where the other 15% goes?
Absolutely, yeah, I'd be happy to. So we do have a percentage that is used for administration of the grant. So it goes to staff. And we have to travel and things like that. So I think it's 5% of the award goes to administration, and then actually the state of Montana does match. So that we get an additional, that 5% amount from Montana. And then we use 10% for state leadership funds, and OPI and OCHI, we split that. And some of that is given to our state institutes. Yes, thank you. The word escaped me. Our state institutes. So every year we give some funding, and I think it's about $14,000 is given to Pine Hills Institution, sometimes the women's prison, sometimes the men's prison. And those are for CTE programmings for those folks. It's very cool. A lot of them end up with credentials that can get them employed once they're released. And we also use a fairly big chunk of, and this is required by the federal government, $60,000 is used to target students that are in gender non-traditional careers. And so what that means is students that are looking at programs that lead to occupations that are 25% or less of one gender or another. So a lot of times this is male students in education and health careers. And we see a lot of women that are engaging in trades programs and STEM programs. And so we spend quite a bit of money on that. And I'm trying to think, is there another specific set aside? Oh, for special populations as well. So these are students that have registered disabilities, that come from low socioeconomic households. Our students that are single parents, where we can give some direct funding to recruit those students into programs and help ensure their success.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yeah.
So in our state plan that we are currently under, the committee did decide to increase the state institution portion by 1%, which did allow us to allocate a few more dollars to places like Pine Hills and the correctional facilities. So very cognizant of the work that they're doing there, trying to support where we can.
Thank you. Okay. So one of the most important aspects of the Perkins application for both secondary and post-secondary schools is a comprehensive local needs assessment. And this is something that really was added to statute in Perkins 5. So back in 2016, 2017, when the Perkins law was reiterated, we went from Perkins 4 to Perkins 5. So with Perkins 5, we saw a more of a formalized push, and this has always been a requirement, but more of a formalized push to make sure that the way funds are being spent at the local level are aligned with what employers and communities and what our industry partners need. And we have to be able to prove that somehow. So we asked our schools to go through this process of the comprehensive local needs assessment. This proved to be, while absolutely worthwhile, and we want this work to happen, the administrative burden became pretty heavy, especially for a lot of those small schools. They were being asked to do a fairly lengthy assessment, considering labor market data, talking with stakeholders. Everybody, all of our recipients are required to have an advisory committee, but engaging with them more frequently and really getting information, these very specific areas, and we'll go through what those specific areas are. And so the consultation list here, so making sure that we're engaging with teachers, counselors, business and industry, parents, students, those special populations. Again, those are students with disabilities, single parents, etc., our tribal organizations, and then agencies serving homeless and at-risk youth. So these are required folks. And again, this is something we want to do this work. This is important. But now that it's in this formalized process and it's in, more of a spelled out way, it became a pretty heavy lift administratively for a lot of these schools. So Shannon and I for years have been wanting to do what some other larger states have done. So like Colorado and New Mexico started doing kind of a regional approach and really encouraging those schools to start working together and coming up with ways to share information for a lot of different reasons. And so One is, we have 132 high school districts that are receiving Perkins in Montana. I'm sure you can imagine that some of those are pretty small, and teachers and staff are already stretched as thin as possibly can be. So then throwing this, burdensome process on top of that was proving to be pretty difficult. We were also seeing that a lot of folks that were being tapped for those stakeholder roles, like our industry and business partners, they were being asked the same questions by multiple schools. And it was starting to become burdensome for them as well, to be repeating the same information, giving the same talk to all these different schools. And so we were noticing some stakeholder fatigue. We also wanted to make sure that we are sharing some quality data. We want to make sure that the folks that are making these decisions are getting good data to make their decisions. And if we work regionally and as a state, we can help these regions, we can make sure that they're getting the good quality data that they need. We were so lucky to be able to travel around the state of Montana at a beautiful time of year in October, and we had some really specific facilitated time to collaborate between our secondary and our post-secondary Perkins recipients. And Shannon and I can talk a little bit more about how incredible and impactful that time was, just to have everybody in the room. We were able to share those resources, share employer input so that they weren't used over and over and over again, and really start to think about connections for future work. So we know that STARS is coming up, and a lot of our schools are already starting to track students that are earning credentials. And so how can we help our neighbors? How can we help our region? How can we help the schools in Montana do that in a way that not only is going to benefit their students, but can benefit their school as well, to get those future ready payments and strengthen some of the programs that they are offering to their students.
I'll chime in there a little bit with some of the work that we did during that time. And you can see the regions that we hit, but several of the questions that we posed in these larger groups were questions about do they have any vacancies, right, with their CTE programs? And it was kind of overwhelming, I would think. Great Falls, that region, of course, that was our first one, early September. But about a third of our participants raised their hand that they were experiencing some shortfalls in their school districts. So that allowed us to have some of those conversations about how do our schools work together to find ways to still provide CTE opportunities for students. What distance and online learning opportunities are there to at least see through a program while they might be experiencing that shortage of a teacher? And then what ways can we assist at the agencies to either help transition somebody into maybe a class 4 opportunity for CTE, or other ways that we can try to connect some resources for those schools that were experiencing those things. So it was really a great opportunity to share some of those resource conversations. And I think it was great for our schools, whether they're a AA or a C, to realize they were experiencing a lot of the same things. Things like scheduling issues, right? Trying to figure out how do we fit all of these courses for students and make it work. And then, funding is always a question, and accreditation, and those questions that they all have of like, are we doing things to make sure that we're earning those credentials and offering dual credit and all of that. So a lot of really good quality conversations came out of these regional meetings.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Shannon, for giving a little bit more context. And so this is, I'm sorry, I said October, which is also a beautiful time of year in Montana, but we were traveling in September. All of our travel just Shannon and I were on the road for September and October, so it all runs together. But we were so lucky to bring, OPI brought just about all their staff to almost all of the meetings. I brought most of my staff to most of the meetings. And we were able to have these incredible facilitated discussions with our high schools. And you can see we had multiple different high schools that were represented at the different regional meetings. And then we had colleges in the room, our Perkins recipients for all of the discussions as well. And just having that that discussion with that kind of linear progression for students. So our students that are engaging in CTE programs at the secondary level, what that looks like for college partnerships, and then beyond that with our industry partners. It was just so incredible to have those conversations, and I think, we came out of those meetings with such positive feedback from our partners that we're really excited to continue forward.
Yeah, I know our CT specialists were really excited, just to get to engage with some of the college partners that we haven't necessarily been as involved with. We had several of our tribal colleges that attended, and we had no idea, like Fort Peck is offering a welding certification, and so it's just a great opportunity for us to know that there's other resources out there to promote. And when you look at some of these numbers, it seems a little skewed. We kind of broke them by regions, but some went to the ones that fit them best. So we actually were supposed to have 2 colleges there in our South Central region, but because of an illness, she actually had to go to our Eastern region. But that was great. We were just happy to have them. And of our 132 high schools, I think we hit about 85% of them that attended these meetings. So quite a big undertaking. I know it's a crazy time of year for our secondary programs. One of these events actually hit during, I think, a superintendent's training. And so we had a few that were really scrambling, trying to figure out what they were going to do, or if they were sending someone else, they were going to go to a different one. We are going to do a follow-up with a handful of schools that were unable to attend to do a virtual session. Obviously it'll be kind of a makeup. It won't be quite as robust as these in-person conversations, but we still want to give them the opportunity to have those resources. And we're looking at doing that at the first of the year.
Yeah, and I want to mention too, with that follow-up, we also had the request from all of the regions to really do a write-up of what was talked about, what was shared and discussed. We had all of the groups break into smaller groups and talk about strategies and priorities for all the different elements of the CLNA, which I think is my next slide. And we will be putting that online for all of our different regions so that in Montana, we consider Montana as a whole. You can talk about the needs of anywhere in Montana as you're planning your programs, because it is in demand. And so we'll be sharing a whole bunch of resources. Hopefully by the end of the year, we'll be able to get that all online, and there will be a lot of really great information to share. I'm gonna go to my one last slide for CLNA, and then we can kind of, we'll open it up for a little bit more discussion before moving on. But these are the 6 elements that are required for the comprehensive local needs assessment. And so what happens is, after this process, our schools propose to us how they want to use the money that they're allocated in their budget. So and every proposal for funding expenditures has to be linked to something that was pinpointed in their comprehensive local needs assessment and the process. So it can be linked to student performance. And again, we want our students to graduate. They need to get, certain levels of skill attainment, education attainment, program size, scope, and quality. So that's, making sure that the programs that are being funded are appropriately training the students that for the occupations that they're hoping to pursue. Implementation of these CTE programs of study, and so we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes, what those programs of study look like, but making sure that those programs of study are able to be operated at the school level. A big element for us, recruitment, retention, and training for CTE professionals. We know that there are teacher shortages, and it is a major struggle for CTE teachers as well. So we want to make sure that, if we are lucky enough to get those experts in the classroom, how can we incentivize them to stay and think about, better ways to retain those professionals. Element 5, improving student access. And so this is, a lot of times our smaller schools, and we ask our colleges to really focus on where are opportunities with our smallest schools in Montana to partner with them, offer CTE dual enrollment, offer career exploration activities, and work with those smaller schools and, make sure that every student in Montana, no matter where they're located, they have access to some quality career and technical education programming. And then element 6, alignment with labor market needs. And so that's also a really important one. We want to make sure that we are spending money on things that Montana industry needs. I was joking with Michael a little earlier. We joke that, we don't want to spend all of our money on underwater basket weaving, even if that's what our students want to do while they're in high school. We need to direct them in ways that is gonna, be a really quality, positive outcome for them. Earning a livable wage and filling a spot that we know that our state so needs. So with that, before we move on to our next topic, I don't have another slide. Okay, so before we move on to our next topic, which is our career clusters, and really Shannon will explain a little bit more about what that actually means in Montana, these programs of study. But before we do that, I just want to open it up for an opportunity for our committee or members of the Board of Public Ed or anyone else in the room to offer any feedback or ideas or ask any questions.
Good morning, I'm Hannah Neeskins. I'm on the Board of Public Education. I'm also the Superintendent of Schools at Whitehall School District. We are a Perkins recipient, very grateful for the funds. I sincerely appreciate the process of the new CNLA process. I do think it's really important to recognize that of the 132 districts or high schools that are receiving these funds, the majority have only one administrator. And the turnover among administrators in the past several years is extraordinarily high, as is the turnover among the CTE staff itself. So for example, in my school district, although we have a high school principal and myself who definitely are working on the Perkins documentation and grant, in 2 years, we had a complete turnover of our CTE staff. We have 3 brand new CTE teachers, and they are all new to the profession. One of the challenges that remains for us, and I believe this would probably extrapolate to other districts as well, is the quick turnaround from the July 1 period of having the grant completed and having people that are brand new to positions making decisions on how to spend their money for the remainder of the year. And so my question is, are those federal deadlines or state deadlines? And if they are state deadlines, has consideration been given to perhaps extending deadlines for schools that have either brand new administration or brand new CTE staff? Because it is extraordinarily difficult to have a person who's brand new to the profession deciding in the very first month that they're employed how they're going to spend their funds for the rest of the year.
Thanks, Hannah. That's a great question. And we do get a lot of, as you mentioned, that turnover. Our staff at the OPI are the ones that actually work with the secondary side of the grant. And those are federal deadlines. So that is why we kind of have that hard and fast. It has to be submitted by so that spending can start that July 1 through June 30th date. The great thing is that we are, trying to reach out and make sure that we're connecting with those new administrators and new teachers as soon as we are aware of those folks. And making sure that they understand like the process. We have been talking about doing some more webinars just because of that turnover. I was really excited this year. So we do a new professionals training and we had probably more administrators sign up for that this year than CTE teachers, which was great because it let me know like we've got a need for this work and to support that. The other thing that we've done that's a little different than how we've done it in the past is we're fortunate enough to have staff that are kind of stretched across the state. And so each of our CT specialists is designated to a region. So you saw those 5 regions. So they can really target and focus in on supporting the administrators and the staff that are in those regions. Because we do see that circle, right? That huge turnover and trying to support things. The other great thing is that hopefully the amendments are not too big of a lift, but is an opportunity for schools to really reevaluate if a new administration comes in or new CT teachers and they need to pivot their direction. And we get that quite a bit because sometimes schools get some secondary funding that they weren't ready for, or they didn't know if they were gonna get it. And so they're able to quickly adjust their Perkins spending for those opportunities. It is just one of those that it's our federal deadline and we try to do, but that is why we wanted to start the CLNA regional work this fall, is to make sure we have plenty of time for those new administrators, new school staff to have plenty of time with the CLNA and not have to try to cram all of this work in February, March, April, May, right before the deadline of the grant. So we wanted to be mindful of that. The other thing that I wanted to add to that is the OPI's CNA survey that came out. Our schools can elect to utilize, and all of these elements that are outlined are also within that survey. So there is data for schools to collect through that survey as well if need be. And that's something that we mentioned on the road, that survey would be opening up and I think close in January 1st, first part of the year, for them to have plenty of time to process that information for their budgets and things. So we try to get information out as fast as we can to help support those things. So thank you for that question, Mom.
Thank you. One other question while I'm already sitting here. So there's roughly 199, I believe, high schools in the state, 132 participating in Perkins. Any sort of read on what's going on with the other 60 schools? Are they struggling to justify the amount of time for the amount of money they would receive? I imagine they're probably some of our smallest schools. For context, in Whitehall, we receive $11,000 a year. We are one of a Class B schools. So I can only imagine the Class C schools are probably receiving maybe $1,000, $2,000. Is it that, or what's going on there?
That tends to be the biggest issue. So we do have 199 high schools, but 165 districts, and this award application is based on high school district. So some of those are multi-school districts that receive that award. Montana does have a rural waiver that allows us to allocate Perkins below 15,000. That is the federal threshold, is that anybody that wouldn't receive $15,000 wouldn't receive Perkins. But because of the nature of our state, we really support the waiver to allow our smaller schools to have and participate in that without necessarily having to be part of consortia. So that is kind of the biggest area that our schools tend to opt out, is because it's such a small allocation. I can use, for example, I believe it was Phillipsburg. Initially was going to do the application and then reached out and said, for the $5,000 that I am receiving, I can go down and talk to my local, community boards and get the same amount of money without doing this part of the work. And I completely understand that. We try to make it as painless as possible, but when you're stretched thin, we get that. And so a majority of them, that is the reason. We do have a few that just do not qualify. And part of that is the size, scope, and quality of program. In Montana state plan, we have it written that if you're a Class C school, you have to have one Montana career pathway, or 2 for Class B, 3 for an A or AA. And so some of those schools are just so small, or they've had teacher shortages for multiple years and they've not been able to sustain a program.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I also just want to invite a Board of Public Ed. If any of you would like to come sit at the table with us, you are more than welcome to. Please feel free to join us.
On behalf of the Board of Public Ed, we like the cheap seats for this one.
Oh,
I'm Tim Clark, Chairman of the Board of Public Ed, and also the elected Richland County Superintendent of Schools. I just followed up on what Dr. Naskins just shared, and then what Ms. Boswell just indicated. I was one of those schools that was looking at it, and I was at much smaller schools. I wasn't talking thousands, I was talking hundreds of dollars, and looking at it and saying, is this really worth the time and the effort and the all of the reporting requirements that I needed to go through as the loan administrator to have the community meetings and do everything with fidelity for hundreds of dollars coming in, whereas I could have gone to the local co-op and just asked them for the money and gotten it a lot better. So Shannon already stole my thunder on that one, and I just encourage this board to, wherever possible, continue to seek alternatives to the federal requirements that they're written with these big big city schools in mind, would that make our largest Montana school still seem small and remote in comparison? And these federal guidelines have never made any sense in Montana, especially when you're talking about a high school that has 40 students, but yet we still have 3 very solid pathways and students that go to the FFA National Convention every year, students that go to FCCLA and as state officers and doing well every year. Some of those smallest schools are creating some phenomenal kids in these great areas, but there's just absolutely no money to support them. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Tharp.
I'll just comment on that of kind of our, vision of trying some of these regional outreaches is we've really encouraged schools to think about doing some consortia type of applications to really start to pool that money together. And I think one of the things that having industry at the table with us, having those conversations that's important is we see other states where they do these regional approaches, and when they leave those meetings, there's match money for each of those regions from industry support. And so maybe that's something that, pie in the sky down the road that we will start to see. But we'll continue to keep those small schools in mind as we do the work every day. Thank you, Dr. Tharp.
Hello, my name is Julia Maxwell. I am also a member of the Board of Public Education and a principal and superintendent of a beautiful little town up by Kalispell called Marion. We are a booming town with 140 students, K through 8. I just wanted to express my support and my glee at hearing that you're thinking of the rural superintendent. My job is not just sitting behind desks or evaluating teachers. I pick up things off of bathroom floors that I really don't want to. And from scraped knees to fevers to parents to bus duty, we do everything. With, I'm sure a lot of federal and state requirements require stakeholder meetings, different plans, all those sorts of things. I'm pretty sure I'd see my parents of the town far more than I'd see my students at that point. However, I would like to really commend your thought of the rural leader. We want to do our best for our schools, but unfortunately, we are taken away from the most important part of it, which is our students quite regularly with paperwork and meetings. So I'm very happy to hear you're thinking of that. I would like to put in a shameless plug for middle school CTE in our local area. Our students' main thing, if they don't have a career path, I grew up in a K through 12 school where the next step was college. In a K through 8 school, the next step is high school, and imagining anything after that is very difficult for our rural students. And they come from an area where industry is important, and if they want to stay in their local area, they need to know what's available. And we lose a lot of our town because they move out and don't know what those pathways are. And I definitely support starting that thought process early in middle school, or late elementary, so our kids know what's good for Montana and will stay true to their roots and not leave our communities. So thank you.
Thank you. I do want to say that we are thinking about middle school CTE on a regular basis. It is something that we have really been putting a lot of thought into the last few years. One of the ways that we've been able to support that with Perkins is we do have a $60,000, I was trying to remember, it used to be 50, it's now 60,000 with the new state plan, set aside for rural reserve. And the last 4 years, we have targeted that for middle school CTE to support those programs feeding into our high school. There are a few caveats with that it has to be a middle school program within the LEA that has applied for Perkins. And they, because of the rural reserve piece, it has to be that they receive under 15,000. But it's a pretty base piece that they just have to kind of give us a narrative and a budget of how those funds are going to be used to tie those students to the CT program at the high school. Because of the success we've done with that part of the Perkins, we had a bill introduced during the last session to expand those dollars so that we can support all middle school and not just those that are eligible for the under that $15,000 threshold. So it is a $5,000 grant per district for middle school that can be used annually to support. And I believe that starts in fiscal year 27. So we'll have information on that coming out towards the end of this year to get folks ready for the new fiscal year and how they can apply for those funds. But it is a start. I think there's a lot of ongoing conversation that we're going to see maybe in the next session And then with the Future Ready and the STARS work, we're gonna see more encouragement of connectivity to those CT programs for sixth, 7th, and 8th graders. Really looking at career exploration in the lower grades and expanding, starting those foundational pieces of coursework for 7th and 8th graders tied into our programs of study.
Good morning. My name is Crystal Smith. I serve as the Opportunities and Innovative Learning Senior Manager at the OPI. One of my privileges is getting to work with Shannon and her team in the CTE department at the OPI. But another hat that I wear is overseeing the Montana Advanced Opportunities Grant, a state funded grant through legislation. And so when I hear about the challenges of funding and the paperwork and the application process and all these other things that might be tied to the Perkins grant, I just would be remiss to not come up here and share that through the last legislative session in the STARS Act, the cap of funding for our state has been removed for the Advanced Opportunity Grant. And so every state would qualify for, sorry, every district would qualify for state funding through the changes in the Advanced Opportunity Grant as well as the STARS Act. And intentionally the reporting as well as the application process is very minimal because we do hear and understand that a lot of our stakeholders are district leaders, the teachers who might be applying for this on behalf of their district are super busy. And so that grant, Advanced Opportunities Grant, funds students in grades 6 through 12 to support any of their post-secondary pathways based on student interest, passion, strengths, needs, and culture. And so when we talk about Perkins and the great work that the Perkins grant is able to help financially provide for our students, I do want to share that as another funding option, as well as encourage any districts that are not currently funded through the Advanced Opportunity Grant to reach out to me, but also, to seek that as a potential opportunity to receive funding, especially for those smaller rural schools that might not either find the value or have the capacity to apply for the Perkins grant. And with that, the application window opens December 1st for fiscal year 27, so it's right around the corner. Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal. Such a good reminder to our schools. More opportunities. Any other comment, question, feedback from our committee or our friends at the board? Okay, fantastic. So I'm going to hand the microphone off to Shannon. She is our expert on this next topic. Really exciting work, the modern career cluster framework. And I'll toot our own horn a little bit. Montana was chosen as one of 6 states to be an early adopter. It came with some technical assistance at the national level and some really exciting work being done. And Montana, so proud to say that for our rural state, we're all spread out and spread so thin. We are really leading the way on a lot of really exciting work, and this is just one of them. So Shannon, take it away.
Yeah, very excited about this work. As Jackie said, we were one of 6 early adopter states. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. We actually just finished our early adopter cohort Monday. Yesterday. Yeah, we had our last webinar with other states yesterday. And I kind of have to reiterate that we are doing very well in Montana. I think the approach that we took when looking at this cluster framework and how we wanted to integrate that into our programs of study for CTE. We tried to think about all of the flexibilities that our school systems are allowed. We wanted to think about the needs of the state and outlining kind of the uniqueness of our state. So with that, Jackie's gonna move my slide forward to share with you a little bit more about our clusters. So we moved from a 16 cluster model to a 14. With that, you'll see there's a chunk of the pie there, or the circle, that is cross-cutting clusters. And those are things that reflect all industry, right? Every industry needs folks that are accountants and doing digital technology and media and cybersecurity and all of these things that become important across all industries. So they have deemed those as cross-cutting clusters that are important everywhere. This focus was about a 2 or 2.5 year undertaking of a lot of national industry partners, a lot of state stakeholders, a lot of surveying. A lot of conversation around one, what clusters should be, what this model should look like. A big lift to modernize this framework to really reflect industry. And so a couple of the other changes that you'll notice is that healthcare and human services are now combined rather than being two separate clusters. And STEM is no longer a standalone cluster area. Because of the nature of career and technical education, it is dispersed across all pathways, which I would say most CT teachers will tell you that they are all teaching STEM. There is science, math, engineering, and all components across all of our CT areas. So those are some of the big changes that you see in the national cluster model. So in Montana, what that means for us is we have gone from a 17 pathway. So our current pathway system encompasses those 16 previous clusters. And we actually split one because design and construction is kind of twofold. There's part that is design engineering for construction, and then there's a design FCS component that talks about more of the interior component. So we're currently under a 17 pathway model that our schools are utilizing. We've made the decision to move that to a 32 pathway model. And before you get too excited, we had questions about, is this watering things down? Is this, no, we really wanted to instead hone in on the skill sets that we're talking about in these pathways. And so instead of a student maybe taking, multiple courses across what would be kind of 2 or 3 pathways, this really focuses them in to be intentional in their look at their pathway when they're thinking about their program of study. There's a couple other things that we've done in Montana that are a little Montana unique, and we're happy to share that, but I'm gonna go ahead and have you step forward. Thank you. So looking at our previous pathways, prior to this coming school year, all of our ag pathways would have fallen under ag, foods, and natural resources. This is an opportunity for our programs to really delineate like what part of agriculture they're honing in on, whether that's ag business, animal science, food science and processing, plant science, technology and automation. And then we have a new area that is energy and utilities and conservation and land management. We're very excited that energy and utilities is a brand new cluster, and it's a brand new pathway opportunity for our students in Montana to take advantage of, looking at those different energy and utility careers, whether it's looking to become a lineman or looking at green energy, renewable resources. So there's really some unique opportunities. This is also an area where a student could be an ag student or an industrial technology student, depending on who the teacher is and what particular courses they're teaching. These are cross-cutting clusters. Also, this is all tends to be our business teachers that are teaching most of the content in these pathways. So we have financial services, and a brand new one for us is arts, entertainment, and design. And this is a little bit of a combination of some of the FCS design and some fine and performing arts pieces. So you'll see those new pathways there that would have been held under the arts and AV are now the design and digital arts, as well as the fine and performing arts, which will be a brand new area, highlighting things like stagecraft, costuming, things that are really industry driven in the fine and performing arts piece. We have delineated out accounting as a high need area in the state. And so we have named that pathway very specific to accounting and are looking at students potentially being able to come out with a certificate to allow them to start working for accounting firms if they decide to go on and then get their CPA work as they're working. So looking down through there, we've got IT support, network systems, and cybersecurity, and that's another area that we wanted to be mindful to call out based on the governor's work recently around cybersecurity and the need for industry support there. So really working to kind of ramp up some cybersecurity offerings across Montana. One of the ways that we've recently done that is a new class 4 through the OPI, where folks can apply for just a cybersecurity credential to allow them to come into the classroom and teach those specific courses. This next section or clusters of cluster and pathway would be those that would be under the family consumer science realm. And so again, design FCS kind of got split out into two areas between the design and entertainment, and then the fashion, textiles, and interiors. Calling out some specific pieces on education to have an early childhood care and education component, because we know that's a critical need area across all of Montana. And then teaching and training, thinking about how do we start to build our own, right? Those pipelines to get students into classrooms and help them develop those skill sets earlier. And then our hospitality and tourism is going to get broke out into culinary and foods, as well as travel and event management. And then you can see the human and community services. Again, that's going to be some of those that would have just been under human services prior. And then you'll find, again, pieces of the fine and performing arts pathway there. Moving into our industrial technology content area. So a couple of changes here. Because the STEM and engineering was essentially removed from a cluster, we did want to make sure to call out engineering under our advanced manufacturing. So it's engineering and advanced manufacturing, a lot of similar skill set. The one thing that we chose to do in Montana, and our team really thought about this, to be mindful of the biggest kind of partners we've had at the table the last few years are those in our skilled trades, and really looking at the workforce. And so rather than having a pathway called just design and construction that hits all of those areas, so students might get a little bit of everything instead of a very specific pathway that leads them to one of these skilled trades. We are breaking that out into 3 sections. So you can see the construction and heavy equipment, welding and fabrication, and then HVAC and electrical. And the HVAC component is a new area that we're starting to have high schools that are actually starting to do some HVAC programs out of their high school, which is really, for me, very cool to see. I would have never thought about students doing HVAC in high school, but we're excited about those schools that are supporting those programs and the work that they're doing. And then looking at the transportation, distribution, and logistics, we wanted to kind of call that out. Again, our automotive folks are other big partners, and so we wanted to kind of name that where it's a little more clear to folks what that pathway is. And so it's that automotive maintenance and repair, and instead of just the transportation, distribution, and logistics. And then you can see the energy and utilities there, again, as a new pathway opportunity for students. And then this is an area that we have expanded into, and it's probably as a industry area, one of the fastest growing, right? One of the high demand is in healthcare. And public service is not an area that we've really highlighted in Montana before, but we know that there is a need. So the new pathways that you will see under these clusters, what used to be the health professions, now is human and community service, allied health, the biotechnology research, and health administration, which I think is a big component there. We definitely need those health administrators to help run those healthcare programs. And then emergency response kind of is a 2-part. So it could be the EMT component of emergency response, or the fire science and management, and just thinking about the need for, wildland firefighters, local firefighters here in Montana. And then military and national security is not an area that we have recognized as a pathway previously. But we do have 2 ROTC programs in the state. We did have 3. We're hoping to get that 3rd one back at some point. But this allows those JROTC students to have a pathway and be part of the CT program. And then the national security portion of that could be students that are very interested in cybercrime, cybersecurity. So there are courses that could take them on that part of the pathway. And then one that we've put up there, it's still a little bit under development because we want to get some more feedback from some folks. But this is a Montana specific pathway, and that's going to be Montana Tribal Leadership in Government. And we've got a few more folks we want to get eyes on the outline that we have before we say that it's good to go. But we are excited to offer that, and that came out of conversation with our Macy group and other tribal partners, is the need for students to realize that there is a career for them to stay home and become local leaders in their own community. So we're excited to have that avenue for them to pursue.
I just want to add that last one is really exciting because like Shannon said, it's a demand. And we also have had some conversations with some of our tribal colleges that might create a credential, whether it's a micro credential or a certificate level, for our students to be able to earn while they're in high school pursuing that pathway. So I think some really exciting potential there.
So one of the things that we've shared out, we were able to unroll this to our CTE teachers and administrators at our Fall Institute in October. And you can kind of see that look of overwhelm, of excitement and overwhelm, because it's, going from 17 pathways to 32. But the thing that we've really tried to emphasize is, and I'm going to steal this from one of my specialists because this is our running joke, is these are not Pokemons, right? We're not trying to collect them all. We would rather see a school have 1, 2, 3 really solid career pathways and develop those into opportunities for students to obtain dual credit, opportunities for them to have credentials, to walk out the door into whatever their next pursuit is, feeling prepared. And so I think that kind of got our schools excited. Part of the work that we did in the fall with them at that meeting is then broke out into our regions, again, to think about what are the regional demands, what are the resources that could be shared across regions, but then have them sit with their different teachers in a cohort, their school, and think about what does CTE look like? How do we really kind of repaint the picture? Because within these pathways, and I think it's my next document maybe, there's opportunity for classes to be cross-cutting. So they could be foundational courses across all pathways. Things like the financial literacy courses that are a graduation requirement, entrepreneurship, leadership. These are all things that are going to support Montana graduates being good stewards and employment in Montana, right? We have a lot of small business leaders. And so having those things are going to give them a foundation no matter what the rest of their CTE pathway may look like. So that is one thing that we did share. And I think that kind of helped ease some of that angst of what's this going to look like, is that you don't have to adopt them all. You can still teach, have your very clear pathway outlined. And then if you want to add some additional courses in that curriculum, it still supports the work. So looking at our timeline, we've done our rollouts. We are starting to do some PD and work with our local programs, having those conversations, getting some things outlined with some webinars and different summer PD that's coming up. And then these will start in the 2026-27 school year, and thinking about what that data collection looks like as we get into that school year. Resource. Yeah, I'm gonna skip these 2 slides real quick, just because I want to share with you. So if you click on that, it should take you. So both secondary and post-secondary, Jackie and I have been working on some toolkits to really share out, not only with this cluster and pathway work, but what that looks like with future ready payments and those pieces. So when you go in and look, I'll give her just a second here. So this is, I give credit to my team. They've put this together. I've just given them some directions. So they've done a really good job of making this very robust across our pathways. If you'll go a few more pages in, you can see, so we talk about the pathways, and then as you look at those courses, there is a prior to high school component, and I wanted to bring this up since this was part of a conversation a little while ago. Is there's opportunity here for our middle schools to really start the work in that 7th and 8th grade year of what those prior to high school courses could look like and how they feed into those pathways. So we're hoping this opens up conversation to engage our middle school and high school CT programs. Sometimes those are one and the same person, right? We've got a lot of K-12s where the middle school and high school teacher are the same person. But for those that are not, we're hoping that this conversation opens up and that they can really think about what that might look like to get students who want to get started sooner an opportunity to do so. And then we have those foundational courses across all pathways, and you can see there are several on there that meet that financial literacy requirement, and then entrepreneurship and leadership courses. And then you get into what those foundation courses would be, pathway electives. And then the other thing that we really want to highlight is a capstone of some work-based learning component. We really want to see students that are committed to a pathway and want to pursue this as having an opportunity to engage in work-based learning. And under the coming soon, you see those industry recognized credentials. We are waiting on that list that's coming out from Department of Labor so that we can highlight the ones that will be available for students to earn as high school students that will also tie to those future ready payments. With that in mind, that there are credentials that are not going to be on the list, sorry. But that doesn't mean that they don't have value, and I think that's one thing to emphasize is just because they don't make the list for future ready payments doesn't mean it's not of value to a student to perhaps get them the skill set that they need for the next thing. And so we just really want everyone to be mindful of that conversation as well. You know, there's some specific parameters that were put on those credentials that the Department of Labor is putting together. And so some things are going to be outside of that scope and they're still going to be important for the work. Yeah, do you want to go back to the other two slides? I do not normally like to talk this much. I like to engage, so I apologize. We've got 2 more slides and I just want to make sure that everyone's kind of on the same page of what these things are. As we think about pathways, and again, this all kind of ties into that STARS Act and future ready payment.
Hey Shannon.
Yes.
Amy has her hand.
Sure.
I can't promote her, so I'm just gonna let her talk.
Yeah.
Amy, can you hear us? Amy?
Do you want me to keep going and if she jumps in, we'll pause?
She's her hand up, so maybe it was.
Okay. Well, we'll keep going through and if she hops back on, we'll stop. So the other 2 components with these pathways work are dual enrollment and, you know, I always like to make sure everyone's on the same page as to what that means. And so just kind of those 2 definitions of concurrent enrollment versus early college and what that looks like for accreditation and credentialing, where that's delivered and what kinds of credits those students are earning, whether it's high school credit and college credit or just college credit. So just throwing that out there to make sure we're all on the same page, and then what industry credentials are. Thanks. Looking at those credentials, that those could be certificates that students earn, whether through a course of study, whether it's a certification that's coming from an assessment, a degree, which typically most of our high school students are not going to get a higher degree. Some do. We do have students that are graduating with associate's degrees or almost with their associate degree as they exit high school. And then those licenses. So just kind of keeping all of that in mind. I think we'll probably be sharing these slides. So these are linked, but you see I have a link there at the bottom for the current credential list from the Department of Labor. Just to kind of let folks know like what's on those lists and kind of where they fall, whether it's a certificate, certification, degree, or license. Again, next steps, and this is the last slide I have. For us, we'll start to be training schools on our data collection for Perkins purposes. But we hope to tie most of that or as much of that as possible to our Future Ready as well. We try to streamline our data collection to ensure that we are not duplicating. Professional development, not only for our teachers, but even thinking about like our school counselors, our career coaches, and the work that we're doing. And then continuing some collaboration between our high school, post-secondary, and industry partners. Jackie spoke about our CLNA regional meetings and the kind of overwhelming outcome that everyone got, like they really enjoyed. I had several schools come up and ask if this was something we could do annually, which I kind of thought they would be coming through the door kicking and screaming and not wanting to have to do it annually. Not necessarily from a CLNA perspective, but perhaps on alternating years, we could look at other topics that would be beneficial for the group. So I think we've got a lot of opportunity to really engage our teachers and our partners. With that, what questions do you have?
Press this button to talk. That work? Press that button to talk. My name's Madeline Quinlan. I'm on the Board of Public Ed, and I have two questions for you. One, there's been a lot of talk about the community needs assessment. Regional sounds like a great idea. And then there's a requirement in the school's accreditation process for community needs assessment. And Shannon, you referred to a needs assessment. I was hoping it's the same one that schools are needing to do for their strategic plan.
Yeah, the survey that the OPI provides that schools can utilize is it's a comprehensive needs assessment. So it encompasses things for accreditation for federal programs like Perkins, Title, those types of things. So it's kind of a nice, they can send it out, person identifies who they are in relationship to being a stakeholder, whether it's a teacher, a parent, an administrator, and that unlocks the questions that they would need to answer kind of for all of those things. So there's an opportunity for them to identify if they're a Perkins school. And when they do that, then they can send it out to business and industry partners as well as CTE stakeholders to get that information for the Perkins side. But yes, it's very comprehensive. So schools can utilize that if they choose to.
Great, thank you. And then my second question is, are tribal colleges, do they receive Perkins funding? And then sort of the larger question is, how are they being brought into the career clusters, aside from the one specific one you talked about for tribal leadership?
Sure, thank you for the question. So we do, we've had 3 of our 7 tribal colleges receive for many years, and we're actually just getting ready this upcoming grant cycle. Little Bighorn College is joining, so we will have 4 of our 7 tribal colleges participating in Perkins, which is really exciting. And as far as the career clusters, so the national career clusters and the pathways and the documents related to that really drive a lot of the work and the funding on the secondary side. On the post-secondary side, we do our best to align with what's happening at the high school so that it's a seamless transition from secondary to post-secondary. So typically on the college side, we encourage those partnerships and through dual enrollment. And of course, with Future Ready, we'll see a lot more collaboration between secondary and post-secondary. So, the career clusters of the post-secondary side, those stay the same, those programs and degrees and credentials. And then we essentially will align them with the career clusters that our secondary partners are implementing at the schools.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are running a few minutes ahead of schedule, 5 minutes ahead of schedule. So our next item is to have a discussion, an open discussion with the board, with our committee, anybody else who would like to participate. We've had some great discussions so far, and I want to make sure that we have plenty of time to continue that if we have interested folks. President Slinger, you don't wanna come and talk about how amazing we all are?
Absolutely.
Jackie, can I pose a question?
Absolutely.
And it's actually to Madeline's point, which is, I think the regional planning meetings, the intent there is to say. The CLNA process is required, we want to make it as easy and productive as possible. And this was round one, right, of doing this new process. I think thinking about, who else is doing workforce planning that needs to involve K-12 schools and colleges, and how these regional meetings support that. Should be pulled in. I thought about CRTCs and local economic development a lot too. Talk to a lot of the folks that the CLNA charges districts to talk to, and also increasingly have to do workforce planning of one sort or another for their own compliance or grant, or because it's useful to do. And so, I guess my question is a little bit feedback. How could those meetings be more useful from your all's perspective? Who else should be included? If there were topics at those meetings or resources at those meetings, what should those be? This is a process that we're going to do every other year, or find a way to support financially in off years. How can we make that valuable there? Tammy, I'm kind of thinking also SWIB, like what are some interconnections so that we're not all duplicating work.
Okay, great. Excuse me, great point, Joe, because we shouldn't be duplicating work. We should be collaborating on all levels and those stakeholder outreaches and listening to industry, which I think we've done that in our silos previously. And so how are we going to get better at that? I would love definitely a conversation around that. And as we delve into the Perkins and create that plan for this year, we have the governor's executive order, looking at that, how it ties into the 406, the six of the 406 plan, and just being aware and trying to be better at serving the workforce needs that we're going to need to fill. Because if we just focus on, I think, the education system, that's too heavy of a lift for them. We have to think innovatively and maybe in different ways that we can fill the workforce need. So I think, getting on the same page in that way will be very helpful. So thank you.
And I will share that this was our first iteration, and we actually had those conversations about who else to bring along. Part of that was timing this year with the 406 jobs also being on tour at the same time and being able to get the right people. And I think it was a good start for us, right, to see what the engagement of our education, our K-12 and our post-secondary partners was before we brought in everyone else. But I definitely think that that's some ongoing conversation. I think that we have to tweak every year, right, to see how we can do things better. And so those are definitely some places where we can connect more. We were very fortunate that we had put together a lot of regional data for the schools. So they had a lot of job market, labor market data from DLI, and we're able to kind of support that. Actually, I'm gonna call out Billings area. In our South Central region, when we looked at some of the pathways that are down there, I kind of said, you guys really need to think how you can work together, because this is probably the largest area where there is a healthcare need and center, right? And only one of our high schools down there has an approved healthcare pathway. And so I think that's opened up a lot of conversation across the different high schools. And I think Billings is actually looking at perhaps a healthcare charter in the future. And so I think that's, it's a great opportunity to engage there as well.
I think Dr. Slinger is going to share how everything's perfect in Miles City.
Hello, everyone. It's on. Shut up. Did I shut up? Okay. It's not intuitive. Red. Shoot, that's thank you, everyone. I'm Ron Slinger. I'm president of Miles Community College, and I am also the honor of serving on the Board of Public Education. So we just got back from a
NASB conference. I thought it was really, really good. And one of the things that occurred to me at the conference was we keep hearing about these kids got to be either college or career ready, and that's the wrong initiative. It's college and career ready. In higher ed, we give away a lot of letters, PhD, BS, MA, AA in my case. What we're really giving away is a JOB. That's what we need to focus on. And we need to make sure that everything we build are the pathways. I love the pathways you just showed. I think it really does explore. I think it also helps to identify some areas of interest for the students. And I think it allows them to realize when you say transportation, oh, well, it could be these 5 or 6 different paths within that. And I think that's excellent. So I really applaud that work. One of the things when you talk about the advisory boards, you talk about engaging the business community. I would just encourage what I'm trying to do now at our college. I will be honest, our career tech ed advisory boards were poor. They weren't very good. They weren't very effective. And every college I've worked at my entire career has been the exact same experience. Not good experiences. But we have totally revamped ours, and we're trying to bring it. And one of the things I keep preaching to us is stop talking and start listening. And one of the things I think we need to do, I see the switchboard like that. So I think I think we need to engage them and understand that. And I think on our side, whether it's up through K-12 or whether it's in higher ed, it's developing those pathways that lead to those jobs. One of the things mentioned at the one mini session I went to at the NASB conference was that every 4 years in information technology, the skills are almost void. You have to literally reboot almost everything. Think about that. Okay, so now we're talking about how does that affect us? Start talking about an 8th grader and saying, oh, you want to go into this. By the time they're a high school senior, which you probably have taught them for 2 years, probably is almost void or needs to be changed drastically. So I think we constantly need to be looking at how do we innovate? How do we engage our business community? How do we understand these credentials? So industry recognized credentials, absolutely all day long. But I also think the lifelong learning component of all of this is going to be necessary. We're an information society, and that is just accelerating exponentially. And having to understand how to navigate that and upskill. One of the things I know our college is looking at is, okay, how do we develop a whole upskilling academy? A lot of schools call them corporate college, right? Where there's maybe it's not for credit, maybe it's all non-credit, it's simply re-engaging and upskilling them. And I think we need to think about that on every level, because whatever we're building today is not going to be effective within 2 to 3 years. So we have to be nimble, we have to be creative, we have to constantly be looking at flexing that. But I will go back to the one thing I hammer about on the board all the time. I'm not a big shiny objects guy. I'm a real big I loved your point of, hey, school, you don't have to do 30 or whatever. You can do 2, but do them really, really well, right? I think it's imperative for us when we talk about K-12 to really hammer the basics. It does not matter if you really have an interest in computer technology if you can't do math. It doesn't matter if you want to do these other things if you can't read and write effectively, right? I think, like I said, I get a lot of heartburn about shiny objects and, oh, this is going to fix everything. If we're not meeting those basic bare minimums, we're not effectively setting them up for success in the future in both career and college. So thank you so much. And yes, there are a lot of great things happening at Miles Community College.
Hello, Hannah Needskins again, Board of Public Education. Yesterday, Joe and I attended the Montana Digital Academy board meeting, where we learned about a lot of innovative work going on at the Digital Academy that absolutely supports CTE. For example, they have an apprenticeship program through Dick Anderson Construction. Now they're adding a second course for that, where students can learn basic construction technology, skills which allow them to be employed, as they learn those. There's also a lot of like medical terminology courses, agribusiness courses, agriculture courses, and things that obviously dovetail very nicely with all of the pathways. I just briefly explored their website, before I kind of suggest this, but one of the things that I think can be very helpful, because I think a lot of school districts are probably offering the pathways in this manner, is some sort of, designation on their catalog of which pathway that course aligns with. And just wondering if there's been conversations about that, or if maybe there's utility in adding either a meeting with them or having a representative on this board, from MTDA, because I do think a lot of schools are providing the pathways, utilizing their resources. And I don't think it's immediately obvious from going to their website, like which courses fit with which pathways, and I think that could really help, especially a lot of our smaller schools. So thoughts on that?
I will just add that we have pretty regular, excuse me, pretty regular conversations with the folks at MTDA. And that has been part of our conversation, is once we had these pathways kind of laid out and knowing what that would look like, is to make sure there's some connectivity to the courses that they're offering. They're great. They work with us a lot on ensuring that if they're offering it as a CTE course, that the person that's providing it is truly endorsed as a CTE teacher in Montana. They've been, great. We've recommended them to a lot of our smaller schools when they have those teacher deficits of like, what are we gonna do with our program? And so we share that out, that they're an avenue for, teacher or for students to at least get some of that opportunity while the school is still seeking out a teacher. So I'm glad that you were able to meet with them and see all the great things that they're doing. And we hope to continue that partnership on the K-12 side.
Yeah, I'll just, one addition to that, we do have a few folks from the Montana Digital Academy that join our dual enrollment calls and our Perkins calls. And we are really lucky to have the connection with Joe being on the board. And so he's able to connect quite a few of those, but I think that's a great point. It would be really nice to have that very visual connection, especially for counselors and students that are pursuing that. We have learned, I think, the last few weeks, a couple months, that there are lots of different folks that are trying to create guidance and resources for students to make it as helpful as possible. And so, Shannon and I are lucky that we work so closely, that our resources are very well aligned. And so I think that's just another good point to make sure that we're, looping Digital Academy in. We have a great relationship with SWIB. And so just making sure that we're all coming together and not bombarding our students with tons and tons of information, but making sure it's all aligned. So I think that's a great point. Thank you.
And something else that Joe was part of was a couple of weeks ago when Dr. Richard Reeves came to the University of Montana, spoke as part of the President's Lecture Series, and then we had an opportunity to meet with him separately in a smaller group, and Joe was there from OG. And it was really fascinating listening to what he was describing, and specifically recommendations which called for how to encourage boys to go into non-STEM areas. It talked about the importance of girls going into STEM areas, but then also boys going into what he has coined as HEAL areas of health, education, and literacy. And then also reflecting upon that with Mike Rowe, who was in Montana this past week, and he's famously said, as when he's asked, well, where are we going to find this 250,000 electricians and plumbers and journeymen and plumbers, all of the different vocational areas? He says they're in 8th grade right now, which is, there's no greater plug right there than to be figuring out how we can be pushing these programs into our middle schools and not reserving it for high school.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Tharp.
Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Julia Maxwell. I'm on the board, but I'm also superintendent principal for a independent K-8 district. So I kind of heard some stuff around this, but I just want to ask a question. So, for example, if we wanted to have our school is way too small, really to get much for help our CTE. We have a total of, I think, 60 students in 6th through 8th grade. We are a feeder school for Flathead, which is obviously a much larger school. Is it possible to partner with Flathead when they apply for that CTE? Even though we are a separate district and separate grade band to get CTE programming, I don't know if that works with your separate grade bands also.
Yeah, so this question comes up quite a bit from year to year of schools wanting to know, well, can we use our Perkins for middle school? And the way that it is written is that school district that's applying absolutely can support whatever middle school CTE that they want to in their application. It's really that local decision on how they decide to utilize those funds to meet the needs. You know, unfortunately, we don't get enough in the state that we're not able to really allocate down into the middle school. There are some states that are fortunate enough to have quite a large CTE Perkins budget that they can do that. And so it is absolutely an opportunity. I think the way that I would encourage you to get involved with that from your district is to reach out to the Flathead High School District and ask to be part of their advisory committee that's doing the work for Perkins and bring up that support piece. I think, you know, going into fiscal year 27 with the state middle school grants, that's another opportunity that you will be able to just apply directly to support those 6th, 7th, and 8th graders and some CTE as well. Realizing that it might not be an FTE availability for you, but I think you just heard like we've got a lot of really great digital opportunities to at least engage students in a small aspect of getting them a start to what it might look like for them to start in those programs at the high school.
Thank you.
I would also encourage you to reach out to Flathead Community College. A lot of our colleges have expanded their career exploration and college exploration down to the middle schools. And so I know that some of our colleges are using Z Space and getting some faculty together to go out to middle schools and do some of that work. And then some of our colleges are paying for buses to get your students onto campus. And so I would really encourage you to reach out to local community colleges because they're looking for a pipeline too. So they are eager and ready to start some of that exploration with your students.
Fantastic, thank you.
Okay, we have 3 minutes left. Is there anyone else that would like to contribute before we adjourn? Oh, we have a taker.
I'm Lisa Schmidt, and I'm the only one on the Board of Public Ed that has not spoken yet, so it's my turn. I'm a member of the Board of Public Education. I'm also a rancher. I'm also remodeling a 125-year-old building. And the goal of that building is to start a food manufacturing plant. So I've worked with Patty, I've worked with plumbers, I've worked with electricians. I just want to reiterate how important what you're doing is to the state of Montana. It's critical to all the rest beyond education. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I gotta add one more little thing. My plumber. Okay, so this food manufacturing plant is supposed to start in the middle of January. And I need a plumber, desperate for a plumber. I found one and he was gonna show up. And he couldn't show up that day because his daughter's 4-H steer had a medical emergency. That's the kind of stuff that happens when you don't have enough plumbers or electricians or whatever else. So thank you. I appreciate your contributions to the economy of Montana.
Thank you so much. That's an incredible note to wrap up on. So unless anyone else has questions or feedback, I think we will move toward adjourning. I just want to give a couple next steps. I will reach out to our committee very soon about our next meeting, which again, we're thinking will take place in January. We will get final information out to you soon. And again, just so happy that we have such incredible partners in Montana that are willing to serve on committees like this and have meetings with us, and I just so appreciate all of your time and all of your really thoughtful discussion. You never know how some of these meetings will go, if people will actually engage, and this has been so engaging and wonderful. And like I said, Shannon and I we love Perkins, we love CTE, so this is it for us. We love it. So thank you all so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. And with that, we will be adjourned. Thank you.
Board members waiting out there, if you